don't know if I'm talking to myself here. I'm just going to give it a few seconds for hopefully get a few people back in. Yeah, this thing, Watch with Mamemeister. I put a TV program on and I talk over it. Now we were watching a film about half an hour ago. I use a thing called OBS, which is a great bit of software. It's absolutely fantastic, but it's completely, I wouldn't say it's bug ridden, it is extremely temperamental. It crashes constantly, which is just a complete pain in the arse. So I'm just going to, hey, evening, Craig, how are you, mate? Yeah, we'll just give it a minute or so. Wait for a few more people to hopefully join. Yeah, but we're watching a program or a film, I should say, called Game On: The Unauthorized History of Video Games. I'm not going to bother putting that back on because I'm assuming OBS doesn't like sort of big video files. So what we're going to watch, hopefully, if it crashes again, I'm going to bail out because it's a pain in the arse for me, and it's a more importantly, it's a pain in the arse for you. Doesn't exactly put my YouTube channel a very good light when it's constantly crashing. So we're going to abandon Game On: The Unauthorized History of Video Games, and we're going to look at something which, to be fair, is completely available on YouTube, and it's Jeff Minter did. I'll just tell you exactly. I'll tell you exactly when he actually did this. He put out. He did a talk. Let's have a quick look. He did a talk. Where the hell is it? He did a talk. Oh, wrong bloody drive. There we go. Right. He did a talk. Back in. Is that the right thing? Yeah, it is. He did a talk. I think it was in 2008. It's excellent. It is really, really good. So we're going to watch that. Rather than evening, Mark. You've got a request. Aye, by all means, let me let me know what it is, mate, and then we'll get started. Hopefully, you've grabbed another cup of tea. But you've probably bloody had about 10 cups of tea. The amount of fuck ups that this thing's caused tonight. I know I get a lot of criticism for these things. The problem is, it's not my fault. OBS is a great bit of software, but it's mentally temperamental. I'm just waiting on Mark to let me know what he's looking for. Take your headphones off and put them back on again. Why are you asking that? I take it you can hear me all right. There we go. Has that done anything? Right, anyway, let's. Time is wearing on. It's almost bloody midnight. So this is Jeff Minter getting interviewed. I think it was not interviewed. He's doing a talk in 2008. So hopefully this is going to work. If this doesn't, proves it's live. That is very, very true, Mark. It does indeed prove it's live. Good evening, Arodian. Right, Arodian, you've literally just joined at the right time. This is take 3. We were watching a film and it kept crashing, so we're going to completely disregard it and watch this interview. So hopefully this works. Enjoy.
Okay, thanks. Well, I mean, I'm basically just going to explain a little bit about how Llamasoft started and take you through some of the history, and then finish up by showing you a little bit of where we're going. Llamasoft really was a complete surprise to me. I mean, the way in which it started was just by a series of accidents of being in the right place at the right time, more than any kind of special skill on my part. I'll actually be showing you during the course of this how bad some of my early stuff really was.
Just for info, this lasts 57 minutes, in case you've got any plans. So, yeah.
I started coding when I was at sixth form college. We had one Commodore PET between the whole college, and I think there were like 4 of us out of the whole body of students who actually showed any interest in it. The college itself, although it had this machine, wasn't actually teaching classes on it for some reason, and we had to teach ourselves. And I began by just making games for my friends on the college computer, on the Commodore PET. I spent the first couple of months or so working in BASIC, and pretty soon realised that BASIC was too slow, so managed to blag a book about 650 assembly language. Taught myself to program in hex. Used to code up games on the thing in hex. And then, after I left college, pretty much, although I bought myself a ZX80 and was playing around with that, I never thought to do anything commercial with it. It was just an obscure hobby at that time. It was before the whole home computer revolution kicked in. And the very idea that anybody apart from uber geeks would actually own these things just seemed ridiculous. So there was no question of ever thinking of selling the games. So I went off to university, studied maths and physics, failed horribly because I spent all my time pissing about with the computers instead. Got kicked out, and to cut a long story short, I went back to Polytechnic, but I couldn't complete my studies there because I became seriously ill. And while I was ill, I'd bought myself a VIC-20. And one of the few things I could do, I was ill for about 9 months, and one of the things I could do, sort of lying down, was coding. And so I used to play about with my VIC-20.
Get out of the bloody road, you fool.
Yeah, you started to see a bit of a market emerging for video games. And to be frank, I mean, a lot of the really early stuff was absolutely terrible. I mean, my stuff was bad, but this stuff was 10 times worse. And I did a couple of games on the ZX81, and I peddled them off to another company, and they treated me fairly badly. And in the end, I just got so frustrated with being treated badly by that and by the bad quality of what was actually out there that I decided that, bloody hell, I'll give it a crack myself. And one of the things that I'd been working on when I was ill was just a very simple scroll routine for the VIC-20. All it did was create a big mega screen that was larger than the VIC screen. You could scroll it around. And one of the arcade games I really enjoyed back in those days was a game called Defender, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And so I created an absolutely horrible version of Defender, which I'll show you because it's really, really dire. Hang on, I just have to get the joystick out of my bag.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of substances consumed back then, and even now, to be fair.
Bad some of my early games were. Go on the other side.
I love how honest Jeff Minter is. I mean, you can tell there he's quite nervous. He's just a real guy. He's
I just got this power book on Monday. I spent Tuesday ramming it full of emulators and bits and pieces, and Wednesday I was leaving to come here anyway, so I haven't had that much time to prepare stuff, so bear with me. Right, I need to make a new VIC-20.
Is the volume alright? So the balance?
Attach a hard disk. I need it to be this one. Start here. Now this that llama is the first ever instance of the LlamaSoft logo. So I can get this thing
Thanks,
to go
Roddy.
screen.
It's good to know, mate.
Alt dash, is it? No, it's not. Bear with me. I've had to install all these emulators, and I'm still learning more around them. And this one, it's Apple Plus to go full screen. Right now. Is this going to work? Hello? Oh dear. Bear with me. Try a different one. This one will work. This is the version, it's called Andy's Attack because this is after we found out that Atari were getting really pissy with anybody calling anything Defender. So, whereas it started out as Defender, it then became Andy's Attack, and instead of rescuing humanoids, you rescued little llamas, of course. If I press fire. You will see just how bad this really is. This is one of the most horrible, buggy, awful bits of software I've ever written in my life. Look at the size of that shit. It's huge and it's ugly. Look at the chunk red scroll and the poor collision detection and just the way that it handles.
You know, to be fair, it's actually not a bad version considering it's very, very first game. You know, it's not great,
but disgusting though this was. I mean, the stuff that was out there at the time was even worse. So
exactly.
What happened was we went to a computer show in London with copies of this on tape, and I think we duplicated about 50 copies. And we went to one of the first shows at what was then called the Cunard Hotel, is now the Novotel. And we're up there with a trestle table, just flogging these games off, and we sold out of them in the first morning. Because all the other stuff around at the time was like hopelessly poor stuff, written in BASIC. At least this had the decency of being written in assembler, and so it could scroll the whole screen. Admittedly, it chunk res, but it could scroll it. And so not only to my amazement did we sell those games out the first day, and we had to desperately go home and duplicate some more. After a couple of days, this American guy in a suit came up to me and said he'd been looking around the show and looking at what was there, and was interested in taking some of my software on. And he asked me if I could put it on ROM. And I thought, Jesus, can I put this on ROM? I didn't even know the first thing about putting anything on ROM, but I just said, yes, of course I can put it on ROM for you. So I took this guy back to my mum's house, and he came in wearing his suit and carrying his briefcase, and I explained this was a guy from America who wanted to sell my software, and he shook my mum's hand and said, look, I think Jeff's going to make some money here. And my mum was like, whoa, because up until that point, I hadn't really believed that all this stuff I was spending all my time doing was actually going to amount to anything. I think they thought I'd just lose interest in it eventually and go and get a proper job just like everybody else. But fortunately, I was saved from that. Anyway, so I did manage, after a struggle, to get this thing to run on ROM. It was still just as horrible, but on a cartridge. I did... that was a game for the 8K expanded VIC. I then decided that I needed an unexpanded game. So the first one I did was... If I just reset this, I'll close that one actually. I'll close that instance of that VIC. Okay. Make a new one. Why am I using this when I've got a mouse? I need to attach a hard disk and attach unexpanded one. My first unexpanded VIC-20 game was not very promising. It's not working. Come on, give me an unexpanded VIC. Unexpanded.
Glad to see it's not just better. Me that has to fuck about with settings. I must admit, you know, having the Mister now to be able to do my live streams has made a massive difference. You really, I mean, you do have to piss about sometimes with settings, but right. In the main,
this was just a glorified bottom shooter. Well, glorified is too large a word for you, really. It was actually quite awful. There were millions of games of this type around at the time, and this is just one more of them, really. So there's nothing clever at all going on there. There's no sub-character resolution motion or anything. It's all just moving chunks around, as indeed most of my VIC-20 work was. But some people liked it. Again, it was fast, and it was a bit better than what was out there, which wasn't saying much, but at the time it was sufficient.
And that's the thing about Jeff Minter's games. Yeah, I mean, even his early stuff, they might have been basic looking, but you know what? They always played really well because, as he said, he wrote in machine code, and yeah, they always had great sound and they had playability by the bucket load.
It's fun in a cheap, blasty kind of way, I suppose.
In case you're wondering, I've just deleted the first two live streams.
It's a fairly straightforward, fairly boring, fairly sort of normal bottom shooter game. And then something strange happened. I describe it as the best week's work I've ever done in my life, really, because it was something which started on a Sunday. It started on a Monday morning, finished on a Sunday afternoon. It's a game that was written in a week, start to finish, and that was what was so nice about the industry back then. You could just do that. You could sit down and bang out a game. 3.5k of code didn't take a lot of time to fill, and I wrote this game. I was very fond of Centipede, but Centipede was a bit too cutesy for me. You know, all the flower gardens and little centipedes and everything. I wanted something a bit more hard edged, so I made this game. The name of it, I had the name of it before I actually wrote the game. And the name came from, I'd been up at a computer show in London, and there were posters up for this new Harrison Ford film that was out called Blade Runner. So I saw the posters and had this very distinctive font, Blade Runner, on the top. And I thought, that sounds good. But I don't want to do Blade Runner, because the game I had in mind wasn't anything like Blade Runner. It's this shoot-'em-up game based on this grid. So I thought, hey, let's call it Grid Runner. So after a week, I ended up with this. And again, it's very simple, but it's actually quite playable.
And as everyone knows, the VIC-20 is the version to play.
The main difference is from Centipede being that you had that thing which fires a laser bolt up called the Zapper, which kept you on the move. And instead of making mushrooms when you shot something,
he's
it
so
makes
humble.
little pods which then expand and turn into
changed.
bombs and drop down. And it would get quite hectic.
Did you watch the 12-hour live stream, Mark?
And it's sufficiently different from Centipede that we didn't run into any trouble with Atari, who of course were completely ferocious about such things in those days. And anyway, I wrote it and I thought it was a fairly nice little game, and really didn't think that much more of it, really. And but I sent a copy out to my friends in the States who are distributing my awful version of Defender. And one night I remember the phone going at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I crawled out of bed.
Absolutely country road this, but he's always done that. He's always plagiarised stuff.
Human engineered software, Hess, this company in the States. And he was ranting. He said you know, they loved this game, they'd been playing it for hours, and that I should stand by to make quite a lot.
Sorry, Martin, I was just asking Mark if he had watched, have you watched the 12-hour live stream that we did, well, when would it be, about 2 months ago? The very, very last interview we had was Jeff Minter and Giles. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. It was brilliant. It was an absolute dream come true for me, getting these guys on my channel.
A lot of money, and I'm like, what? It's just a silly little game I made in a week. But I'm like, okay, fair enough. And I put the phone back and went back to bed and went back to sleep. And then got up the next day and remembered it and thought, was that some weird dream I was having or something? So I'm sure they said that this game was so good I was going to make loads of money. But no, it turned out he was actually quite serious, and they turned it into a cartridge, and
great stuff.
It did actually do really well on the VIC-20 out there, and it was the first sort of major big success for Llamasoft. I think it got to, for a while, it was like #1 in the VIC-20 charts in the States, which to me was really surprising. I did make a fair bit of money out of it, enough to sort of keep me going for the next few years. And as I said, best week's work I ever did in my life. I wish I could have another week like that. But by the time this was happening, there were rumours of a new Commodore machine coming out, and in due course, this company, Human Engineered Software, brought over for me one of the first ever Commodore 64s, and that, I think, is where what many people will regard as the classic era of Llamasoft began. And the first game I actually started to work on the Commodore 64, and thank God the Commodore 64 emulator is a lot more easy to work than the VIC-21, was a game called Attack of the Mutant Camels. And I actually started this.
Yep.
This
Probably
was the first game I
favourite
started, but it was not the first game I released on the Commodore 64. I'm discounting Rock 64, which I wrote on the first night I had the machine. It was like a basic game that was pretty poor. This was the first actual sort of proper game I wrote. Right, what's full screen on this emulator then? There we go. Of course, it's Apple, comma. There we go. Now, this was obviously heavily inspired by, I don't know if any of you remember, there was a Parker Brothers VCS game called Empire Strikes Back, where you had to fly a snow speeder across a horizontally scrolling landscape, and they had the big walkers going on there. I remember reading a review of that game, and it described the walkers as giant mechanical camels. And I thought, ooh, I like camels. Or I do like camels. Love to put them in a game. I like the defender-y kind of games, and so I banged this out on the Commodore. You can tell it's a very first-generation Commodore title because although the Commodore had this lovely, smooth scrolling hardware, I was too ignorant to know how to use it at that point. So it's all very chunk res, and the camels look like two fat men in a camel suit, pantomime camel suit.
Absolutely fantastic game. This I still play this game for fun.
So you look at that, this one, ugly camel. Gameplay is very, very simplistic. Just dodge bullets and shoot the camel up the ass.
Interesting to see he's got exactly the same gameplay strategy as myself.
I probably won't play it long enough because I was a boil to death, but if you do this long enough and destroy all the camels, then you get a hyperspace sequence, which is the only difference from the Parker Brothers thing I can think of. And then go on to the next level. But the development of this was actually interrupted by the guy from Human Engineered Software, who they had such success with their VIC-20 game. They wanted me to do a VIC-20 conversion of Grid Runner, so I did a very quick and nasty VIC-20, Commodore 64 conversion of Grid Runner. So that took me about 2 days in the middle of developing this, and you can tell it's a pretty poor conversion because again it doesn't really use any of the Commodore features. It literally is just the VIC-20 code on a different size screen matrix. So I won't even bother showing you that. But right, I think we can just reset with that. Yeah, this is by far the best emulator. After that, I did, well, the game which most people will remember, the game which when people think Lamasoft, Commodore 64, they always think this particular game.
Is it Revenge of the Mutant Camels, is it? Yeah.
I'm sure you remember this. As you can see, I finally got to grips with using the horizontal scroll stuff, so I've actually got a smooth vertical scroll. My camel is slightly better than before. It looks a bit more camel-y than two fat men in a camel suit. There's still lots to dislike about this game if you actually look at the collision detection. Okay, while we're not starting, perhaps I need to swap joysticks.
And funnily enough, a little anecdote, this game, which came out, when did it come out? 1983, 1984? It actually got an update about 2-3 years ago. I mean, it's a brilliant game. It was one of the sort of first games I bought. I love this game. I found it way too difficult to play, but I love the music. I love the graphics. It's very off its time. It's got all the C&D things and spliffs and God knows what else. Fantastic game, but it was really difficult. The way he kind of jumped about and that kind of stuff. So what Jeff did about 2-3 years ago, he actually enhanced it. He changed it. He changed the controls. He made it easier. So yeah, I think that's got to be in the Guinness Book of Records as a game having an update after 40 odd years, which is just mental. But Google it, you'll find it. It's Revenge of the Mutant Camels, but it's like the newer version. He's not changed the graphics. He's just basically made it more playable.
Just a second, bear with me. Interface, emulator, swap joysticks, I don't know.
The good old days of pissing about with emulators. I don't miss that.
We're gonna OK that, come on. And the OK button is off the screen, thank you.
I've had that problem myself.
Thank you. There we go. Now, if you actually look at this game and watch the bullets, the collision detection is atrocious. It goes through most of the time on some of these aliens. It's really bad. It does actually work sometimes, but you've really got to work at it.
Yeah, you can see them going through. I never really noticed
But
that.
people liked it though. I either chose to ignore that or forgave me. This is one of the worst levels for us. Some of the other levels are a bit better.
Sorry, I know the end. Yeah.
But every time I
when you get it working, the Mister is awesome.
At the time, it went down really well. I think because games at that stage were so simplistic, they really didn't have a lot of levels in them, and this had like 42 levels, and it had sort of very odd enemies that attack you, different attack patterns each level. That, for its time, was fairly new.
There's that sound effect there. That sound effect you just heard.
I was beginning to get away from...
That sound effect, the bleep, 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 bleep. That's the one that bloody gets used in Paradroid.
Just doing like versions of arcade games that were slightly different. I was actually doing shoot 'em up games in my own style, and this really was the one which began the whole sort of beastie theme to my games, which has been running through them ever since. Anyway, so 42 levels of that, and that was the game which really got Llamasoft on the map, and that's the game which really also started the polarisation of opinion about Llamasoft, which is something that I've noticed throughout my whole career. People either really get it, or they really just dislike it. And people always say, Jeff Minter, oh wow, he's a really cool guy, he did all those cool games. Or say, Jeff Minter, he's a wanker and his games are awful. And that still goes on to this day. But, what can you do? And one of the things I'd like to do, I don't know whether there's a way I can make them available here, actually. If I just...
Yep, you're right, Arodian. What was that game? What was that game that he did recently? Which I have to say, I've not been able to get into. Can't remember what it's called. It was the Atari game that was never released. What was it called? Anyway, yeah, apparently he actually used the VIC-20 to make sound effects for his latest game, which just goes to show how bloody awesome the VIC-20 is for sound.
Out of Frodo for a second, or at least reset that. What I've got from back in those days, I had one of the very first ever handheld camcorders.
That's the one, Happy Coding, yeah.
It came with a suitcase back then, but
that's it.
It was one of the first ever self-contained camcorders, called the JVC GRC1. And I've got film which I took at the old computer shows.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah, some of these games do require a bit of thinking, and they don't appeal to me because I'm a bit kind of thick. But the kind of Twitch shooters, all the grid runner stuff, and that is just bloody awesome. But yeah, a few of the games I've kind of even. I mean, Jeff Minter, when I interviewed him, he did admit that Mama Llama was the Marmite game. He did say that it was way too difficult, and quite literally nobody actually understood how to play the game.
So Llamasoft history here. Let's go here. History 1. Do I get preview? There we do. That's my brother Rob. Hey. And again, the screen is too small for the play control. Hopefully I can play.
Evening, LFC. Hope you're well, mate.
Please. Space is space, thank you. There we go. And I think it's quite interesting to have a historical record of what it was like at those old 80s computer shows, because it was all very different than the modern computer shows, which were big companies and hard sell. Back in those days, it was lots and lots of small companies, all run.
Now, one of my mates, Ian Boffin, an anecdote, I'll wait for him to appear. He actually appears in this video. I'll stop it when we see him.
By families or individuals, and the atmosphere is entirely different. And I've got they started out as 3 DVDs worth of video records from the Larmstorff Historical Archive. So, yeah, look at this guy.
That was cool.
Wow, I'd kill for a jumper like that. But if there's any way I could make these available, then I would like to make these available to anybody who's interested to have them, just as mementos of those old days. Anyway, if anybody is interested in looking at these further afterwards, then let me know and we'll arrange to get them distributed.
Silica shop, remember that? Alright, he's not going to let us see any more of it. That's a pity.
Right, let's have a look through. I'll try and go reasonably fast, because otherwise, if I stick in Commodore 64 era, we'll be here all day. One thing during the Commodore 64 time, it was actually 20 years ago now, there was an idea which had been kicking around in my head ever since, even before I got onto computers at all. And that was the idea that it would be nice to have some kind of tool that would create a visual accompaniment to music. And I made on the Commodore 64 this very, very simple demo.
I never really got into the whole light synth.
What it was,
I do appreciate what he was doing,
like
but it wasn't something I really...
fire button. It creates patterns. Well, it was just something I thought would be really nice, and nobody'd done anything like it before. I think the first demo of this was like 1K a code, tiny it was. And I showed it to my friends, and we'd sit around and we'd listen to Pink Floyd, and we'd play with this.
What did you smoke?
Just ordinary cigarettes. And it became something which became like a passion in my life. I mean, this simple little demo and the way it affected people. I mean, some people just didn't understand it. They'd say, why do you want to do that? Where's the fire button? What's going on? And some people just went, wow, that's really cool. Let's sat and play with it like this.
That is actually cool. I mean,
And
I do appreciate what he was doing.
there was no term to describe anything like this. Nobody had really done anything like this before. And so I thought, what should I call it? And I thought, call it a light synthesizer. And this became the first of many. And it's so simple, but so nice. And then, anything more on the Commodore 64? Yes, of course, Commodore 64. Commodore 64 was where I first ever came across anything like a demo scene. I know a lot of the demo scene arose from Kraken Cruise, and that's where the intro started, but there was another part of it which arose from... There's an online community
that was
used
in
to
the
be around on the
ST
Commodore
and Amiga,
64
if I
in the UK
remember
called
rightly, or
Confinet.
was it just ST?
And people just used to upload little demos to one another. And you'd sit there overnight. I think the whole thing closed down about 4 in the morning for maintenance every night. But you'd sit there, and there was this one chat room you could go and hang out, and people like me and Tony Crowther and a few other programmers used to be there. And we'd take it in turns, just uploading these little demos. And after all, it's got really popular, and so this Commodore 64 network evolved its own little demo scene. And some of the stuff I did for it were, let's have a look, if I've got, yeah. This is one I did called DNA, which was just basically a multi-sprite demo.
I remember downloading that off
I can't remember what the controls were.
Compunet.
ZNX to change the frequency of the waves and play about with it. I was just fascinated by sort of algorithmic graphics. And there's another one which I actually found for the first time. I had not seen this demo since I actually wrote it all those years ago. And it's a demo which has some very, very simple algorithmic fractal style music in it. Oh, shut up. And this musical style was then, I later used this in the intro to Iridis Alpha.
So that's fractal music then, huh?
But I really like the whole thing about this little demo scene that started to arise around the CompuNet was that it was excellent. It encouraged people just to sit down and get creative and try out little snippets of code and share them. You didn't have to wait to produce a whole game. You just try out some idea and post it up and see what people thought of it. It was really good fun. Okay, we'll have one more Commodore 64 game before we go, perhaps. This is one of the last ones I did. This was actually published through, oh God, shut up. Through Hewson Consultants.
Take care, Happy Gordon. Thanks for dropping in, buddy.
This was a Defendery style game. This game actually is guilty of having one of the worst difficulty curves I've ever implemented. I learnt a lot from this because of the mistakes of that particular difficulty curve. Right, the third wave in is stupidly hard. And you have to pass the third wave to actually open up the rest of the game. You're only really seeing the intro to the game until you pass. We're on the second wave now. It won't take me long to get there, and you'll see what I mean.
Is it a liquor ship thing or called?
You had to, every time you shot anything, you gathered up charge, and you had to add the charge to the planet by landing on the planet. Add to the charge on the planet. But here we go. I'm just about to. Here we go. Now these guys are absolute bastards. Because they grab hold of your shit and they just won't let go. This is the only real... This is the only real technique for dealing with it. You have to stick and run. You have to keep turning and firing and turning and firing and running away. But if you didn't know that, I mean, so many people would die again and again and again. But I've got letters from people who told me they smashed their joysticks to bits trying to get through that. But unfortunately, you had to get through that level, or you couldn't get to the main part of the game. Also leaves a few behind, which you shouldn't do. Where you have two ships and you have to transfer every now and again to the bottom layer.
There's so much going on. Look at that bottom screen.
And there are actually 5 different warp stages that
We
you can have on
didn't
each
have any
layer, so you can have different worlds on the top and the bottom and everything. It's quite a complex
Sunday,
game, and
but,
again,
nothing
people
at the moment,
either love it or they
LFC.
hate it. I mean, there's this guy on our forum called Sick Boy who's absolutely like crazy good at just about any arcade game you can handle. But we had this game in the Lamasoft League, and he would not play because he just hated it so much.
Evening, Cole. How are you, son? Hope you're well.
So we're going to have a different world on the top and the bottom.
Gonna bloody crash there for a second. If it does crash, folks, we're going to call it a night.
Anyway, I shan't carry on playing that because I'm sure the guys are all crazy.
At this thing tonight. But touch wood, it's all going well. There are 27 minutes left of this video.
Okay, let's leave the Commodore for now. I'll show you a rarity now, actually, before we go on to the ST, and it ties into that little fractal music demo which I did. I discovered on an old videotape when I was going through clearing off old videotapes and transferring them to DVD. I found a very, very brief clip of a game called Attack of the Mutant Camels '89 on a system called the Conix Multisystem.
Take care, Mark.
Now,
Thanks for dropping in,
hardly
buddy.
anybody saw that system
See you
because
later,
Conix bombed before there was a chance for anything to get released. But I've got a little tiny bit of very early stage gameplay to show you. You'll see that in places the frame rate gets very choppy. It's not because the system couldn't handle it, it's because it was still quite early code and it wasn't really very well optimal. But you will hear in the background the music for that game, which was going to be an enhanced version of the same kind of fractal stuff that I was doing on that demo. Let me just find that in the videos.
Out of curiosity, folks, how many of you guys are watching this just now have actually seen this video? I don't mean the video that I'm making, the actual video that we're watching, the Jeff Minter one. How many have actually seen this? Of course you can, Colin. Fire away, mate.
Preview. It's not a minute. That's my ugly mug. That's not it. There it is. Oh, and there's bonus points for anybody who guesses what that. There's a bit in the middle of this game where it cuts out, and there's a still of something. Anybody who can tell me why that still is there and what it pertains to will win bonus points from me.
Yeah, me too. I've seen that a few times. That old Conics, I think it is.
So this is basically attacking the mutant camels with mega super power-ups.
There is actually
and
an
the fractal
emulator.
music would play on a major key when you were doing well, and it would go into a minor key when you took damage. And but I thought this was lost forever because I don't have a conic system anymore, and I never thought I'd see this again. And I was really quite surprised to find this.
Colin, you can go on to. I'll see if I can actually get the link. Just give me a second and download the images yourself. Just give me a second. Try and find it. Just go to that
tell me
link.
what that was used for?
Just go to that link, Colin, and you can download
Right,
all these different
make that
images
clear in a minute.
yourself. Yeah, they're freely available. Just look above, Colin. I've just found you the link, mate.
I think this game was one of the only games I ever played on an x86 processor. And what was confusing was that I was doing code on this in the morning using an x86, and I was doing code on 68000 of the Atari ST in the afternoon. And that was really confusing because the move instructions were an entirely different way around on each machine. So you go from one to the other, and there's some horrible bugs by confusing that.
You need to make sure you download the right one, Colin. If it's a Raspberry Pi 4 or a 5 or a 3, make sure you download the correct one. Best thing to do is go onto YouTube and just do a review, watch, type in the name of the image, and there'll be somebody on YouTube will actually let you see what you're getting. But yeah, tons of great games.
Right, so obviously I just started working on the ST at that point, and I did a few games on the ST, but the one which is really significant, I suppose. Let's go to my ST folder. Was this, and that's the answer to what that still frame was for. It's the digitisation of that character there. I tweaked it up a bit later on, but I don't know if many of you played this. If you haven't, then you bloody well should do, because it's still a fine game to this day. Let's just get it going. Obviously, I love Robotron, the arcade game, but I wanted to do the version that was like had a bit more depth to it, a few more levels. I mean, how lovely Robotron is after you've seen the first 8 or 9 levels, you've seen all the enemies that are going to be in it. And of course, I wanted to beastify it, because me being me, everything has to be chock full of beasties. This was at a stage where I really was wondering whether I was going to have to leave the whole game business, because I was finding it increasingly difficult to get my games distributed. Llamasoft couldn't really act as a publisher anymore, because it was becoming much more of an industry. Games publishing was done by these large companies, and there was a very small scope, or very little scope, for a small independent publisher to do their own thing at all. And so I was working on this game and really thought that I was loving the work. I really thought it was a lovely game, but I was sad because I never thought I'd get it distributed. I actually showed it to 1 or 2 of the majors and said, would you be interested in taking this game? And they all said no, basically, piss off. So I'd heard of this thing called shareware that was just starting up in the States, and it seemed completely idiotic, but I thought about it, and I thought, actually, maybe that might just be crazy enough to work. And so I then had to explain to my parents that I was going to create this game, I was going to give it away to anybody who wanted a copy, and then say, pay me if you like it. And they were like, what, you're totally crazy. And they spent like days and days and days arguing with me, saying, you can't do that, you can't do that. In the end I said, look, I'm just going to do it, I've got nothing else to lose, I can't sell it anywhere else, I'm just going to try it and see what happens. And so I finished the game, and I knew some people at, I think, ST Format, and they said they'd take it on their cover disc, and we got it out there. And I wrote this long README file just trying to explain what shareware was and why we were going about it that way. And I was absolutely staggered at the response, because I still get quite emotional even to think about it now. We got thousands and thousands and thousands of registrations. And not only did we get registrations, we got thousands and thousands and thousands of letters from people just saying how pleased they were that they could have this nice game for £5. I think we gave them another game if they registered as well. So they were getting excellent value. They were just saying, we can't believe that games were like 15, 20 quid a shop those days, that I was actually trusting them to have this game and then pay if they liked it. And I think at the height of it, I was getting through a roll of fax roll a day, because these letters were coming into my mum's place and she was faxing on to me. And it was basically, it was the saving of Llamasoft. It really was.
That's awesome.
It turned us around. It bought me enough time to carry on into the next phase of Llamasoft's existence.
Yeah, Colin.
I still get emotional
Colin Bryden is the main man when it comes to high images. He'll keep you right.
I mean, it was the goodwill of people that saved Llamasoft and saved my career, really. But I still love this game. At home, I've got a MAME cab, and it's also set up with an ST emulator, and you can finally play this game the way it should be played, with 2 joysticks, just like Arcade Robotron. And you can crank up the emulated CPU speed as well, so the slowness of the original ST is cancelled out, and it's all smooth as silk, and it is just lovely. It is just one of my favourite things to do, just to sit and play Llamatron.
It's a bit for Nicky trying to get the 2 joysticks.
One of the things I did on this game, I learnt a lot.
Some
of the games I did on Commodore 64.
Once you get it working, you want to ramp up. I think you put it to, is it 8 meg? Put it to 8 megahertz, and it plays silky smooth. It's like Robotron, but a bit easier and way more playable.
I was very into making the games very difficult, and I went a bit too far into, like, I'm only going to make this game for hardcore gamers, and if you can't play a difficult game, then you can piss off, basically. And I also got a bit too esoteric with some games. I mean, Mama Llama, okay, I admit it, I was firmly up my own arse at the time I wrote that. I was trying to be too difficult, and it was just too out there. So with Llamatron, I really had to think. I love Robotron, but Robotron is a forbidding game. It's really hard. If you don't know what you're doing, you get in there, and then 30 seconds later, your ass is handed to you on a plate. And I wanted to make a way that people could... I love playing shoot-'em-up games. There's a very visceral thrill to kicking ass and shooting all those enemies, and loads of bullets, and loads of enemies you can hand yourself, and you love it. But I wanted to open that up to people who might be a bit unwary of playing those games and never played that kind of game before. So I put in this thing called the Droid. Let's get back to the title screen. Can we have the title for the screen? There we go. What the Droid was this little purple guy that would actually go around shooting enemies for you and catching llamas for you. And all you had to do was basically, on the first few levels at least, if you just like learn the controls and avoid getting shot, the droid itself would do a lot of the hard work for you. And what I found was that this opened up this game to a much wider audience than it would have been if I'd left it in sort of Robotron hardcore styling. And I was getting letters from people not only about the shareware, but also about the fact that they were enjoying playing this style of game that they'd never actually been able to enjoy before because it would be too difficult for them. And the age range playing this game, I think the youngest one I heard of was about sort of 4 or 5 years old, and the oldest was a pair of pensioners who used to play Lamatron as doubles team and absolutely loved the hell out of it. And of course you could play without the droid for the hardcore gamers, and you got more points for doing it that way. But it taught me a lot about making a game accessible, and it's something I try and do in all my games now, is make it so that when you first pick them up, it doesn't kick your teeth straight in. You've got a chance to settle in and learn enjoying the mechanic. I think that's important. If you actually sort of, it's nice to get the feel of your ship and to get the feel of what's going on and go, ooh, those are pretty explosions, I'm enjoying myself, and oh, I feel all powerful now. And you do that with the first few levels, and then you just start to bring on the challenge. You bring on the challenge before you know where you are. You're up there and you're battling out. I think that's a really important thing to do. I'll never again write a game that is just like hugely forbidding right at the start, because it limits your audience so badly. It's not worth doing. And here's where I get a bit short
Some people actually
of
say
example
that
material.
our ST version is better than the Amiga one.
There aren't
I'm not too sure
emulators
myself,
out for
anyway.
later stuff, but and I think a lot of people know where the story went from there. Oh, there was one thing I forgot to show you actually on the 8-bit Atari, was the evolution of psychedelia. There was nostalgia. The whole lights.
Yeah, there's colour space, psychedelia, then there was colour space, then there was
Because
triple.
that really is the whole, the
Can't
second
remember
string
much
of
about Tripletron, being
my
honest.
career really. I mean, I've got the games, but the other thing which is my passion is the light synthesizers. Atari 8-bit. Yeah. I showed you the Commodore 64 one. And now.
Yeah, this is an Atari, so it had more colours.
Right, so I think this is. What is full screen on this one? Oh, Apple F. It's different on every single emulator. One of the things that was lovely about the 8-bit machines was the extended palette you had, and the way in which you could use what's called a display list to make your own custom resolution. So you could create things like this illusion of a curved screen, simply by changing the vertical resolution as you went down the screen. And this was a much more involved light synthesizer. It had more commands and certainly more colour. The Atari colour was good. And at this point, I remember hearing that there were people as I think it's a Canadian musician called Todd Rundgren who used to use this stuff. And he's still into light synthesizers to this day. I think he used this. I think he used Tripletron on the ST, and then he went all Macintosh, and that was at a stage when colour Macintoshes were really expensive, and I couldn't afford to develop light synths for them, so I had to stop. He actually rang me up and spent a long time talking to me in Wales, trying to convince me to work on the Mac. But given us that he'd probably be the only one who actually bought a light synth, I couldn't really justify it at that point.
You might not be into this kind of stuff, but you've still got to respect Jeff Minter for just trying things differently. He's always been a pioneer.
Put the auto demo on a bit more talk. So anyway, after I did the oh yes, now I've got a little bit more video I can show you actually. So Alt F on this, isn't it? Come on. After I've been working on the ST for a while, I became quite friendly with Atari UK. And used to do some stuff for them. Did I think an official version of Defender on the Atari ST and a couple of other games for them. And I also did a game on their new machine called the Falcon. And again, look, this is stuff which not many people have seen, on account of the Falcon being quite a rare beast.
Yep, goes for an absolute arm and a leg on eBay. Very,
And
very
it consists of multiple different levels. This one is. Again, it's an attacking mutant camels level. It's a bit like, I suppose, the Conix game, except it's nicer. It's got more backgrounds, more weapons, that kind of thing. But you had loads of different levels. You had a llama 20 level, you had a Attack of the Mutant Camels level, you had like boss ships like a Nemesis, you had horizontally scrolling levels, you had different things to it. I'm hoping somebody sometime will come up with a Falcon emulator, because it would be nice to release that. It's one game of mine that not many people have seen. But anyway, I think the rest of the story from then on gets quite familiar. I came to the attention of Atari UK. I did some stuff for them. Then I came to the attention of Atari US, and they had a new system called the Atari Jaguar. Oh, actually, they had the Panther first. They had been working on the Panther first, and unfortunately, it's something I don't have any demos from. And the Panther was quite a cool system. It was like halfway between the 8-bit Atari and the Jaguar. It was a kind of SNES kind of level of power. And I designed this quite complex Star Raider-y kind of intergalactic shooting and trading space game. Started work on that. Was only in it about couple of months, and then they decided they were going to pull the plug on the Panther, and I was a bit annoyed. But then they invited me out to a developers conference, and we found out about the Jaguar. And so I found out the Jaguar had been in parallel development with the Panther, and they decided that since the Jaguar was much more powerful, it was almost complete, they wouldn't waste their time and efforts on the Panther at all. They'd go straight to the Jaguar. And they had a list of games they wanted converting to the Jaguar. And they read this list out.
Bloody ass is killing me.
One of the names on the list was Tempest, and I always loved Tempest. I used to have a coin-op Tempest when Lamasoft first got reasonably successful.
And then he got another one.
And I was really scared because I hadn't touched a polygon in my life. Everything had all been sprite-based, and like the very sniff of 3D used to make my stomach churn, because I knew I was crap at maths and crap at actually like hacking out anything like polygons. But I love that game. And I thought, God, I want to do it. So at this DevCon, they said, who wants to do what? Who put their hands up for what? And I said, Tempest. Let me do Tempest. And they said, all right, you can do Tempest. Yes, come on. So eventually got my Jag Dev kit and got it home, played around with it, started doing Tempest. I think I got just vectory Tempest up fairly quickly. In about 4 or 5 weeks, I had something that was like playable, like ordinary vector Tempest. And I was working on that for, I think it took about a year to 18 months to produce that. And what was odd was that Tempest wasn't really a high-profile thing for them. I think it was just something they thought that it was in their back catalogue, it'd be nice to have a version of. But it wasn't anything they were really making anything of at the launch time. They were much more promoting titles like Trevor McFur and the Crescent Galaxy a lot more than Tempest. I think because I used to send them out revisions every now and again, and a lot of Tempest didn't really come together until the last sort of 2 or 3 months, and I think maybe some of the earlier stuff hadn't looked promising enough, and so I thought, it's a bit of a back burner title. And so I really thought it wasn't going to be that huge a title on the system. And I remember I was due to go out for final tests, and I arrived out at Atari for the beginning of the final test on Tempest on the day when they were all getting back from, I think it was one of the CES shows, something, January CES, something like that. And they were all coming up to me and saying, "Oh, well done, well done." I'm like, "What are you saying well done for?" And apparently, like, Tempest had got one of the best games in show at the CES Awards. I'm like, "What? You're crazy." But no, it really had. I think it was a combination of many things. I mean, it's like Tempest itself is a lovely design. I'm not saying my particular extension of it was that lovely, but it's a beautiful base to work from. Toyo's original is just such a stone cold classic.
Evening, Christian. We are watching. This is an interview or a talk that Jeff Minter did. It was a Google talk, and I think it was 2008. We've literally got. It's been on for 50 minutes, so there's 7 minutes left. But it's wonderful hearing them talking and just reminiscing. Really, really good.
Plus, the audio guys did a fantastic job. The audio guys did some of the best audio I've ever heard to come out of a cartridge-based system, and it absolutely rocks. And I think it was the combination of those 3 things which really made Tempest 2000. It wasn't just the game design, it wasn't just the code, it was all of it. It all fit together so well. I remember one of the things that somebody said to me, one of the test crew said that when they were playing the game in a dark room at night, it was like a combination of being at a good music concert, playing a game, and being at a light show. And I thought, yeah, those three things, that's where I want to go. Those three things fit really well together. The idea that the game could be this intense audio-visual experience, that it could incorporate this, the light show element appealed to me, obviously because I'd been doing the light synthesizer work down the years. Really, really, really totally appealed to me. And there was a little seed planted in my mind at that point. That was 1994. I remember I've still got some design notes for it somewhere. I had this idea in my head which I just called Unity, because it was something I thought I need to do a game which brings all those three things together, which brings the light synthesizer and the game together. And that idea sat in my head and sat in my head. And there was an intervening time, of course. Unfortunately, we know what happened to Atari. I know that it still exists in France to this day, but to me that's not really Atari. That's like the zombie undead version of Atari. I suppose you could argue that even the Atari I worked for was the semi-undead version of Atari, since it was Tremel-era Atari as opposed to Bushnell-era Atari. But there were at least people who were still there from old Atari at that point, and it was still in the same building. It was still spiritually the same Atari, I think. But anyway, I then went on to work for VM Labs, who created this system called the Nuon, which I'm sure you've never heard of, and I did actually a version of Tempest on there, which I have a little clip of video from. Unfortunately, it's not that
My favourite game's got to be Attack the Mutant Camels, but love Grid Runner, bit Hover Bover as well. And of course, the best version of Grid Runner is got our Tempest.
The thing we did with the Nuon, the Nuon, it was a very interesting beast to code on. It was only clocked at 56 megahertz, but you had 4 VLIW CPU cores on the chip. So each VLIW CPU core could launch up to 27 operations per tick. So if you wrote really, really well stuffed in a loop, so although the thing was only ticking on at 56 megahertz, you could actually do quite a lot of computation per pixel. So I used that to get the very...
Best way to play Tempest 2000, apart from getting a Jaguar, is to download the Atari 50th anniversary. There's a version of that, and it's been enhanced to kind of run even better, so go and check that out.
Heavily smooth effect, which some people either love, some people think it's blurry, I think it's smooth, it's a matter of taste really. But this game, it got very well reviewed, I think got 9 out of 10 in Edge magazine, but it reached an audience of about 3. Which is a bit of a shame.
Jeff, I'm sorry to say, but we are running out of time very badly. So
Okay,
you back to a few words for the rest of your presentation.
Okay.
Unity.
Unity, all right. I'll cut to the chase. I'll show you a little bit. This is from several months ago. I'm not showing you anything current. That's partially deliberate and partly I just haven't got any media ready at the moment. The whole idea in Unity is to create an environment that's based... Oh, shut up. Oh dear, it's going to give me a pain for that, is it? Can I just run a movie? I run this on a quick time instead. Right.
Oops. Unity did look awesome, I have to say.
So we had a bit of feedback there, so we're going to have to see it. We're going to have to see it without the audio. But this is just a test of one of the tunnel sections. The textures inside the actual tunnel are themselves light synthesizer effects that respond constantly to the music.
Sadly, this game never came to be. Bullfrog
You see
Online Studios.
the levels.
It never existed. Probably the most the game that he did put out that does resemble Unity would be Space Giraffe, which does look awesome. It's a very Marmite game. It's a difficult game. I'm absolutely pish at it, which you'll be surprised to hear, but it's a great game. And obviously the light synthesizer that he put out for the Xbox 360, if you've still got one of them, him and Giles did put out if you play a disc, you can have the light kind of synthesizer thing, and that was Jeff Minter. and Gilles that wrote that. But yeah, Unity never. I was actually lucky enough to meet Jeff Minter down in Oxford at a Retrovision event, and he brought along. We got to see Unity before anyone else did, and I was standing at the bar, and Jeff came up, and I introduced myself, and I said, "How's Unity getting on?" And then he went into his little kind of man bag, and he brought out this little DVD player, and he let me see the video that you're watching just now. So, yeah, awesome memories.
Actually built inside the VLM editor. All the creatures in the game are generated on the fly algorithmically. There are no pre-drawn or pre-rendered models in the game at all.
That does look awesome.
The idea of the game, there'll be different spaces connected by the tunnel sections. You're seeing one of the tunnel sections now, obviously. The tunnel sections, obviously, I mean, given my Tempest history, the tunnel sections will inevitably be quite Tempesty in gameplay.
I don't think anyone makes games like Jeff Minter. Jeff Minter makes the most beautiful looking games. He really does. I don't think anyone can touch him when it comes to stuff like this.
It's a gratuitous little bit of, this is when I first started putting together VLM 3.5, it's just some of the demo stacks from there. Basically, every parameter in the game that makes something move is hooked up to a sort of series of waveforms that are generated based on the tempo of the music. So everything in the game will move in time to the music, in rhythms derived from the tempo of the music.
It's utterly mesmerising, it really is.
Every single texture is dynamic, every single texture is generated on the fly. There are no static textures, there are no static models, there is nothing pre-calculated.
Yeah, absolutely.
After this little section, there's a very brief clip of one of the other sections, there's a horizontally scrolling section. Test of the horizontal scrolling section, again the whole background is generated on the fly.
So very Nemesis looking, that, huh?
Okay, it's early demo stuff, the explosion's the wrong way around, the cut the screen, just go with it, it's not saying anything far here, so much work in progress. I think that's pretty much it. I have got a much longer VLM demo, but I haven't got time to show you that. If anyone wants to see that, then come and see me, I'll show you on my PowerBook. But I'm sorry I've waffled on and run out of time. But I would like to say that Unity's going well, and with the light synth as well, there's some stuff going down. The best is very much yet to come. And that's it, Lamasoft so far.
And there you have it, folks. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed watching that. I do apologise about the first couple of attempts, but OBS kept crashing. So anyway, folks, I'm off to get a hot chocolate and go for a lie down. Thank you very much for watching. In fact, I'm talking bollocks. I've still to record tomorrow's Friday Waffle, so I'm going to go and do that right now. I should hopefully be along on Sunday, usual time, 7 o'clock till 9. I can't remember what I was playing. Yeah, I was playing arcade conversions on the Commodore Amiga, and I'm going to continue that. So if you want to watch that, 7 o'clock till 9 on Sunday. Until next time, folks, as always, have a great night. Thank you very much for watching.